Okay, this is session number 8, and we're going to continue our investigation and examination of male-female relationships. And I guess, in some sense, all kinds of different human relationships. And we're going to be isolating out of these human relationships the anger component, and to take a look at our styles and strategies for managing our anger and how they in turn impact on the quality of our human relationships. As we mentioned last time, most of our experience of happiness will be contingent upon an outcome of our quality of relationship with another human being on this planet. And therefore it makes sense, practical sense, that we increase our skills at maximizing the amount of harmony and love that can flow between two human beings. And so we want to continue along that vein. Now, last time we looked at a lot of things. We polled the participants in the workshop. We were beginning to get an idea of the kind of issues that come to relationships that are bound to contribute to the conflict. We talked about certain issues that are particular to men. Men have certain concerns. They have a certain perception. Women, of course, have their concerns and their perception. And very often, it is these perceptions, these sets of expectations that clashes in a relationship, making that relationship unfulfilling and very often a form of punishment instead of a source of joy. So we have to look at these things very closely, and that's what we want to continue to do today. We've already mentioned the word already, so let's get it up here now. Expectations. Normally, whenever we come into a relationship, we bring with us a whole series of expectations. Expectations that we have formulated over the years as we ourselves have approached adulthood. Many of these attitudes and expectations are generated within the context of our childhood, in our family of origin, and they travel with us outside of this family of origin and follow us right into our adult relationships. Very often, the expectations are mistaken, they are unfounded, and become a source of much conflict and unnecessary grief in our efforts to fulfill one of the tasks of life, which we talked about, which is the task of love and family and personal relationship. Is one of the tasks that we have to be able to successfully deal with as we enter into adult reality. But these expectations come in all kinds of flavors and forms, don't they? We bring with a certain expectation even about the kind of man or the kind of woman we want in our close personal relationship. One of the homework assignment that I given to you last time was for you to take a look at the kind of bundles of expectation that you have associated with the individual that you have been looking for all your life, you see, and to examine that set of expectations and to get some insight into it. We'll process that probably a little later in the workshop. I want to come back to this expectation concept because it's very important. Normally when two people meet and enter into a relationship, I'm just going to use male and female, each one are bringing with them all of these expectations, desires, hopes. All of these things are forms of expectations. The trouble is that most of us enter into relationships totally and completely inadequately prepared to contribute anything to the relationship. Please make a note of that. There's two levels on which you can exist in any relationship. You can exist at the level of contribution, where you are bringing something to contribute to the other person. Or you could be on the useless side of the relationship. On the useless side, you're simply coming into that relationship totally focused in on me. What can I get out of this other individual? What can this other individual do for me? please make a note that the movement into relationship that arises from the useless side always fail with no exception whatsoever. They fail even if the two people stay together for 30 years. It is still a failure. Don't want you to be deceived. Just because you have not ran to the divorce court does not mean you are in a state of marriage at all. Marriage is not the numbers of years that you stay together. Marriage is a spiritual relationship. It is a dynamic between two individuals where there is a flow of contribution. And when there is no flow of contribution, then those two people are living on the useless side, and they will derive no benefits whatsoever from the relationship. Not in a true sense of the word. They will still, in spite of their long-term marriage, still be miserable and unfulfilled. You see my point? Still they will be full of suffering and a hankering. Still they will suffer from a void, a space that is empty that they can fill. If you are in a marriage and you are unhappy, you are doing something wrong. Now please understand this. If you are in a relationship and you are still full of misery and you're still full of pain and suffering, you are doing something wrong. Clearly, you don't know what you're doing. Most of us do not have a clue as to how to go about building a good human relationship. The starting point, of course, is becoming first a human being, a first-class human being. How, I ask you, can two people who are not yet even at the level of being human beings come together and create a situation that will render peace and happiness to the parties? It is not possible. What very often happens is that we start off in these relationships almost subhuman. I don't mean in the biological sense. I mean in the spiritual sense of the word. Notice the scenario. Two people meet. Person A meets person B. Now, neither one of these people are developed. Neither one of them are psychologically and emotionally developed. They themselves are in a state of needfulness. Very often, they may come together, they cannot, they don't have their financial life in order, right? And so very often they seek another person to round off and balance out their economic needs. They don't know how to deal with their own existence. They are lonely, they are miserable, they feel isolated. And the effort to transcend their loneliness very often drives them to the arms of another human being. So their loneliness plays a role. They are afraid, they're fearful, they're insecure. So many inadequacies, just from a human level. The point is that they're in a state of uselessness themselves to begin with. Independently, they can't be happy, so they're looking for someone to make them happy, because alone, they don't know how to be happy. They don't know how to make their life meaningful and fulfilling by themselves. So hence they enter into these relationships now in search of that missing part of themselves, which in fact they have to find in them. The mate is in you. Everything that you're looking for in the other is in you. Please make a note of that. And you must find it in yourself. And until you find it in yourself, if those of you who were at Sunday, we talked about Dharma and all these other concepts. Until you complete yourself, your own course of development, then by definition you're on the useless side. And what happens? The other person is also on the useless side, because she also have not been able to solve any of the problems that confront her as an adult. So what we have, folks, in effect, is these two people living on the useless side coming into a relationship. What do you think is going to happen? Is that going to be a happy parent? Is that going to be a relationship that will produce joy, love, bliss, peace of mind? No way in the world. Two people, each of them are lonely, each of them are miserable, But they come together thinking that out of their two sets of loneliness, they will produce happiness. This is not possible. How can two lonely, miserable, inadequate, ill-prepared human beings come together and create a state of happiness? The mathematics stink. It is wrong. And it failed. So we have to look at this thing here, because all of us are in relationship by virtue of the fact you're on the planet. You don't have a choice. You are in relationship. Here we're talking about relationships across this entire spectrum. We won't confine it just to the wife, husband, lover, and those kind of things. Certainly when you hit the planet, you're already in relationship with your mother and your father. If there's siblings already in the family system, you're in relationship with them. And if you've lived your whole life from a level of uselessness, then you've developed a kind of psychological pattern that you simply carry with you into your adult relationship, and it fails. It fails. So we have to rethink the whole motivation for entering into relationships. If we are sitting and pondering that, well, I'm looking for somebody to give me something, you need to pause at that very point and look at it. What is it that you want from that other person? Because that is the thing that you must already get for yourself. Most of us enter our relationships from the level of uselessness. It is selfish. It is our own self-interest. What can I get? Do this for me. Do this for me. Do this for me. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. Do this for me. Do this. Do this. Do this. That's a useless side in the relationship. You are a burden. You are parasitical. You are a user. You will tend to dominate the other person. You will try to control the other person. You will try to reduce them to a means and not a need. And that is a horrible thing, to reduce another human being to a means. But you will have no option, you see, as long as we are ourselves on the useless side. So we want to look at this thing very clearly. And we have to look at it. I've already emphasized over and over again throughout all of these workshops, all of this I saw, that you are either on the useless side of life or you're on the level of contribution. There is no in between. There is no such thing as you neutral. No. You are either on the useless side or you're on the side of contribution. Most of the problems that we have in human relationships arise from us being spiritually on the useless side. There are a few other things that complicate human relationships as well. Communication. We're going to come back to each of these and examine them in a little detail. I just want to put up on the board the territory, the psychological and emotional map of the regions that we will be examining as we conduct our journey for satisfying, fulfilling, and meaningful human relationships. Communications. Very important in any relationship, but particularly in these close personal relationships like marriage, parenting, things of that nature. How do we communicate? Most of us communicate with language. But only about 40% of what you say really is communicated to a person, if that much. The problem is with words. Words themselves. All of us have a different definition of a word. Each word that we use when we're talking to each other carries a connotation that is unique and private to us. For instance, in these relationships, we'll say, I love you. What does that mean to the other person? It is almost always different from what it means to you. Because you are associating with the word love a set of expectations and experience that you associate with that word. And if you're on the useless side of life, usually your concept of love has a useless definition. No. I love you means I need you to do for me. Do so. I love you. I love you really means, in most instances, particularly when we're on the useless side of the relationship, I need you. I want you. I can't survive without you. What will happen to me without you? It's a very mundane thing. It's a very physical thing. It is business. Nothing wrong with business. Please don't misunderstand me. Nothing is wrong with business. But you shouldn't confuse it with love. Call it what it is. Confucius says the beginning of chaos is calling something by the wrong name. Call it by the right name. And now if you want to enter into a business agreement with another human being, that's fine. And raise your children. It's a business, okay. Issue shares. You know, give everybody a chance appropriately, like a business should be done. But don't confuse business with love. They're very different phenomena. So when you say I love you're talking about what you need from another individual, what you want from another individual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other individual may be thinking something entirely different. Who knows? It will vary and it's unique to each parent. Each couple is absolutely unique. So that communication problem gets in the way. I see couples say all the time, I love you. And the other person, well, I love you. But they about to kill each other. What kind of love is this? If you're about to kill each other, that's love? You call that love? What is that? I love you, but I every now and then have to knock you out. What is that? This is madness. It is madness. It is the result of muddled thinking. There is no viveka. The person is not capable of thinking clearly. That's not love. Love, according to me, is always on the contribution side of the relationship. Please make a note of that. It never has nothing to do with what you need and want from another individual at all. The mystics often say that the whole criteria for a person to decide to even move into a state of marriage should occur only when that person has fully matured. And by mature means that you yourself have reached a point in life where you are now abundant. You have excess joy, excess this, excess that. And now the intention is out of your abundance to share. There's no need on your side. This is not even about what I need. It's that I have too much love. I've whelmed up with so much love now. It's just running out of me. And you're looking for someone to throw this love on to. But it's not that you're in need. You see, marriage contribution arises out of abundance. But if you have no abundance, if you've not done anything to bring yourself to a spiritual state of abundance, then you will be a burden to another human being. You will be parasitical. You will not bring any joy. They'll hate to see you coming. You know the feeling. You know, you hate to, as you cross the stairs and turn the key to go in your house, how this depression descend on you. You hate coming home. What is this? How can you hate coming home to someone you love? But men, they get knots in their stomachs. You see, women, when they hear him turning the key, oh God, they get a rush of anxiety. He's back. Oh God. You know what I mean? And you are having such a good time. You know, you and the children, and now this bum is coming back again, right? And here you have to go again. So we all know that. And remember, are we going to get these relationships perfect? Absolutely not. We're not perfect. We just want them good enough, folks. Just good enough. And so we're going to talk about that. So 40% of this kind of communication that we're doing with word is already loaded with misinterpretation because all of us have different definitions. Thank God that most of us don't conclude from based entirely on what a person says. The other 60% of this stuff comes from body language. Women are uniquely gifted in this area. Gentlemen, women are very observant, far more than men. And the source of their mythological female intuition is not rooted in spookism. There's nothing mysterious about that. Women read your body language and get the real deal. The real deal. So their intuition is based on their natural orientation. They pick up details. If I ask the women what's in this room, they'll click it off. I ask you men, you won't even know. Well, I don't know. Because you're not looking, you're not seeing. when you are in the law enforcement business, my brother would tell you that you have to start developing this kind of female quality to be observant. But women don't have to be trained in any academy. They'll make them some very good policemen, police women rather, because they are naturally observant to details. And so that's the body language. So you can now see when your words are contradicting your body language with a woman, are you in trouble? You're in trouble. Yes, you saying I love you, but she looking at your body. Your face all frowned up, your teeth are clenching, your temples are flaring, you know, your body posture. She can't buy that. And it leads to a lot of conflict. So just as a tip to you men, you see, if you're going to lie, you need to learn how to lie in total. Right? Use your body in your lying, okay? That'll work. But if you're just going to lie at the level of words, she's going to bust you every time. All right? Maybe a special course on how to lie with your body would be appropriate for a lot of brothers. In any event, we have so much material to go. I'm clipping along here because I want to get this out. And we're going to, as the old folks say, make some gravy to this. Because this is really, really important. In fact, that's the whole point of all of the workshops that we've been doing. Because what good is this whole business about learning how to manage your anger, manage your lust, manage your greed, your attachment, and your ego? What use is that in some kind of metaphysical, philosophical board? It only has value as we are able to apply them in our day-to-day relationships. This is where it's at. And if you are not able to take this knowledge and apply it in such a way that it improves and deepens and elevates the quality in your relationship, then you've gotten out of all these Saturdays. You wasted your time, your money. You see? You've got nothing. The payoff is in your relationships. You see? It's in your relationships. So we want to not get sidetracked here. We want to keep the important things up here. So now we're beginning to get an idea. Communications are important, and whether or not you've been able to shift from a level of uselessness to a level of contribution in your relationship. So let's pound away at this some more. What do I mean by level of contribution? To enter into a relationship from a level of contribution. I've already suggested to you that arises out of a certain abundance. It is this growth that you've already attained spiritually where you want to give something to somebody. You want to contribute something to somebody. I've already told you that if you're not on a level of contribution, the symptoms, the psychological symptoms, the subjective symptoms of failure to live on a level of contribution is that you're miserable all the time. You're not happy. And you don't feel that your life is meaningful. You don't feel fulfilled. All these feelings can only come from an act of contribution. There is no other way. You must contribute something to another human being to have the experience of being meaningful. Contribution, to give. It's interesting in Buddhism, even in the spiritual path, people are divided into these two categories. In Buddhism, they call the one the Bodhisattvas, and the other one they call the Arihata. Two categories. The Arihata is the individual that seeks his own spiritual enlightenment in the hell with the rest of the world. I am going to become enlightened, and I don't care if the rest of mankind perishes. This is the motive behind the Arihata. They're in pursuit of their own personal enlightenment and no one else. They're not concerned with humanity at all. And then there are the Bodhisattvas, who also are in search of their own enlightenment, but with one exception: to become enlightened in order to share the experience with other human beings. See the difference? See the difference? So even in the spiritual journey, this duality follows us all the way throughout every aspect of our strivings as human beings. And of course, it is the bodhisattva that is of value. It is these bodhisattvas, these Jesus, these Lord Krishnas, these Muhammad, these Imhoteps, these Ptahhoteps, these Kabirs, these Mahaviras. The list is endless. It is the bodhisattvas that have conferred the benefits of their spiritual attainment and shared it with us. They are responsible for all of the holy books and scriptures, all the knowledge in the world, all of the high art has come from the bodhisattva. You can then imagine how important it is to have this same spirit within the context of our relationship. So I really want to ask you a question, a rhetorical question, of course, but what kind of level are you on in your personal relationship? Be honest. It does not matter that you be honest with me. It is of no value. I am nobody. It's not important. What is important is that you must be honest with yourself. And I want you to do some authentic homework. I want you to really look down. Don't bullshit yourself. Pardon my French, but today we have to be very tight, because here we're talking about these personal relationships. And I am so insistent on this because in these relationships, children are born. Human beings got to come through this. And you shouldn't be damaging other human beings. You have no right to damage another human being. If God so sees fit to send a human being through your union, you have a tremendous moral responsibility. Don't mess these kids up. They're not yours. They weren't given to you for ping pong, to use as a form of weapons in your quest to beat the other person at the game of uselessness. So I want to be very serious this morning about this, because this is important. I don't care much about how many scriptures you can quote. It's meaningless to me. No one cares about how many years you've been on the path. Meaningless. All that matters is what kind of human being are you? Are you contributing something? That's all that we're interested in. I'm reminded of a story where such a person who thought it had a very wrong definition of what constitutes spirituality approached the gates in heaven, and St. Peter refused him entrance. He protested. I know all the scriptures. I've studied all the books. I've been in the church or in the synagogue or in the temple or in the gurdwara. I've done a lot of meditation. I accumulated a lot of knowledge. And St. Peter said, you're not getting in here. The man said, why? He said, you've not done anything. You fed nobody that was hungry. You've not clothed anybody that was naked. You've not visited nobody that was sick. You have no right to approach this holy ground. It is the case. The Lord is simply interested in your being a first-class human being. No one cares anything else about this other stuff. The other stuff is your ego mythology. Drop it. It is worthless. It is nonsense. Good human being, making a contribution to another. The way of the bodhisattva. You see? So we want to do that. And I want you to do the homework. Look, are you in a relationship at a level of contribution? Or are you in a relationship at the level of uselessness? If I could interview your spouses, see, I could get around your ego mythology, because you're going to tell me, well, Bhagwan, I'm on that contribution level. I'm contributing in my relationship, but you have to remember, you can't deceive me so easily. I can simply call your spouse up and ask them, how long you been married? Oh, 30 years. What has the man contributed to me? Nothing. The man has been a burden, a source of misery. My life has been going downhill since the day I met him. You see? So we know how to get around your ego mythology. Doesn't count here. And that's what you think you're doing. The reality is, what are you doing? Yes, you've been thinking that you've been a contribution. Yes, you've been thinking you've been contributing. But that's involved in your own ego trip somewhere. Let's look at the reality. So I want you to, as a real serious homework, look and see where you are. You may be vacillating. Sometimes maybe you are at a level of contribution, then you vacillate to a level of uselessness. There could be a combination. I don't know. But you need to find that out. And then you need to decide from this day on, what side you're going to be on in that relationship. And I tell you, if your decision is to be on the side of the if your decision is to be on the side of the contribution, I guarantee you, you will transform the whole relationship. It is amazing. It is miraculous. Yes.
I was going to say, can you give an example of contribution? If you take care of your family and pay your bills, is that contribution? Or
what is your motive
or is it more to it?
What is your motive behind paying the bill? Is that to ensure your power to dominate?
Well, it's just part of my responsibility.
Okay, then you see, each of us have to answer that because we have to look into it. Now remember, I've already explained to you the difference between these good intentions. You understand? Contributions, you know, have no relationship to your good intention. Are the paying the bills good intentions? I don't know. I've given you enough knowledge already for you to be able to answer those kind of questions. But we don't want to confuse contributions with good intentions. We know that good intentions are always selfish, always, with no exception. We simply are disguising our own selfish ambitions in the form of an act that we claim to be in the behalf of our victim, the other person. It's always counterproductive. We always get the opposite effect, and it is always self-defeating, with no exception, and it leaves you with a feeling of being good for nothing. So we've examined that in great detail. But your question is well put. What is an example of contribution? The question is open. We should look at that because that's what we're talking about. Well, it could come in many forms, can it? I mean, you can make contributions on a mundane level, right? You can make contributions on an emotional, psychological level, on a purely mental level, on a spiritual level. These are the categories, the levels, the different types of ways in which you can make a contribution to the person. Mundane contribution. Right? The thing to understand is that when you're making a contribution to a person, there is absolutely no expectation on your side for any compensation or retribution in any shape, form, or fashion. That's how you know. If you are paying your mortgage and paying your bills and doing the responsible thing, and to that activity is associated and linked a whole series of expectations and demands, then you're not in contribution. You're in business. It's okay. Please understand, I'm not condemning that. It's all right. But it's business. And when you understand it's business, you can do business better. Right? So you'll get a good, nice business relationship with your wife. Nothing wrong with that. As those kind of things go. But you will know a contribution because there is no expectation. There is no result, outcome that you have attached to it. You're looking for nothing in return because it's coming out of your abundance. It's coming out of your abundance. If you give money to your children, you're not running a tab, are you? You don't go and make an entry in your accounting log, right? That on this day I gave, you know, my son $5, and then when they turn 18, you give them a bill. You see, that's business. No, it has to be it's coming out of your abundance. No expectations, no result in mind at all. It is your giving, just out of your abundance. You see, no trade. It's not barter. I'll pay the bill, pay the mortgage. You cook the food and clean the house. That's business. Okay, it's all right. It's a division of labor. Nothing wrong with that. You need a division of labor, right? But that's in a relationship at the practical level. That's all right. Nothing wrong with that. It's very important. But it's not contribution. It hasn't gotten there. With contribution, there is no expectation for any kind of repayment whatsoever in any form, shape, or fashion. It is a pure act of spirituality. Very different. Yes, sister.
Bhagwan, I don't know if this is one, but since I've been on the path, whenever I've been in relationships, I've been, especially since I've come to the House of Ra and I've learned the science of Saint Mind, I'm always overwhelmed with the knowledge and with the understanding. I always try to share with whoever is in my life or whoever I feel close to. Would that be a contribution, or is that good intention? I don't know.
Well, you know the difference. If it's is there any? Do you expect them to share back with you?
No.
That's a good sign, isn't it? Because if you were expecting, well, I'm gonna give you some of mine, and you give me some of yours, that's
No.
not okay.
No.
If it's just coming out of your abundance, if it's irresistible, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a beautiful science. You just want to share, but whatever
Yes.
I share is always shut down. Anyway,
Well,
oftentimes it's not shut down because
Yeah.
often people don't understand.
Another thing, sister, you have to understand, when you're making a contribution, you're trying to make a contribution to that person, has nothing to do with it. You're trying to give them something. You see? And if you're trying to give them something they don't want, you're not in contribution nowhere. Right? A good deed is a good deed only when you're giving something that the other person needs. Find their needs. Look at every human being you come into. What can I give this person that they really need? What can I give them that they need? Not what you're going to impose, not what you think. Always the case. You see my point? But it is much better than exploiting, isn't it? So I would say that you're moving toward the right place. Very close.
Just sharing the tapes.
Share knowledge.
Yeah.
Yes, nothing wrong with that. You see? But it should be no proselytizing. There should be no imposition on anybody. You see? There should be no trying to challenge them in their own personal beliefs and philosophies. It shouldn't be none of that. Because you should respect the person's belief. Even if you personally disagree with it. Yes, brother. Go right ahead. Okay. So there can be a level of contribution on the mundane level. Food, clothing, shelters, physical, something like that. Again, the only key is that there should be no expectation from anything in return. And you can be in a relationship with your wife and you want to give her certain thing. What's wrong with that? You see? What's wrong with nothing wrong with that? So that you should be able to contribute on all of these levels, in fact. That way you cover the whole spectrum. Emotional, psychological, sometimes just a kind word. Really. It's that simple. Someone is a little sad, or someone's a little depressed, or someone is having feelings of inadequacy because of a shortcoming that they discover in themselves. And sometimes, just a kind word, a sweet phrase, can very often cheer them up. You see? And you're not looking for, after you cheer them up, you're not saying, okay, now here's your bill, right? Pay me my fee. I mean, it's just your contribution. A point will come in time as we grow and mature spiritually, where we begin to see the oneness of being. We cease experiencing other people as being separate from us. And it naturally triggers your contempt. It breaks your heart. Something automatically in you wells. You see? And then it becomes natural. You see? You become rooted in this state of bodhisattva. Yes, brother?
You kind of put a little pressure on yourself when you try to support somebody's emotional needs 24 hours a day.
Yes, of course. Now, if you're trying to play savior, I'm telling you, it's not playing savior. You see, it is flowing out of your abundance.
Just like with the mundane situation, isn't there a thin line to where you can be a fool, or
of course.
You can actually,
of course. Very often, Rob, that is the exact situation when two people are in a relationship of uselessness. You see, when both parties in a relationship are in that relationship out of a level of uselessness, you got a lot of trouble in these relationships, because you will feel that you're being exploited, right? I mean, you will have that whole sense, because the other person that is in a relationship with you is not on a level of contribution. They're trying to use you, and you're usually trying to use them and each other, and hence the conflict. What if the case is if you on a level of contribution and the other person on a level of uselessness, right? Normally you get paired with the same person that you're on the same level with. Destiny tends to work like that. But even if by accident, if there's some quirk in your karma that you got paired with the opposite type, that's a great grace. And that person that is on the level of contribution will bring you to a level of contribution automatically. Whenever there's the two, the person on the level of contribution will always win, and always that energy will convert and transform the useless side of the relationship. But more often than not, if our spouse is useless, it is almost with no uncertainty that you are also on the useless side. That's how come you got together in the first place. You see, it very rarely happens the other way. Nothing wrong with that, because whether we're on the useless side or the side of level of contribution, we have say so in the matter. It's just a matter of awareness. Today you can decide to come out for that level. It's your decision. You have a choice in the matter. You're not doomed. It's not like the color of your eyes, something you can't do anything about. You see, the useless side of life, or the level of the contributing side of life, is a reflection of our attitudes. That's all. And attitude, thank God, we can change them, can't we? We just need to lift them up out of our unawareness, look at them, examine them, edit them, and move on with our life. It is really that simple. Now, I don't say it's not hard work, because you've been so habituated in this useless pattern. America itself promotes a cultural mindset that leads to our type of useless approach to life. You know, it's in our literature, it's in our institutions, it's in our arts, and all of these things. So just by virtue of being conditioned in this Western culture, most of us have a strong current of uselessness in us. Does it make us worthless human beings? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Is it possible some people can just be so deaf, dumb, and blind that you can throw off these kind of energies, and it just, it instead of penetrating, it's just bouncing off. They just not receiving it the way they should receive it.
Well, you may have to, brother, you may have to move among those people who are the same kind of person you are. You might have, out of your uselessness, made a mistake, right? Out of your own. And remember, you have only yourself. You have to take responsibility for that. You chose the person. Yeah. It was you, right?
Right.
You chose a useless person, because you was working out of uselessness. You thought that I'm getting a person that's going to be able to improve my life and do all these things for me, and then suddenly you find out this person not doing any of the things I thought for, that she's just useless. Yeah. But you yourself is useless. It's okay. Now that you realize you know that you want to get out, you might need to change mates. I mean, you have to be practical. Leave that to your own discretion. You see, I am simply laying the parameter down. You see, and you're right. Some people are so habituated and rooted in their useless state, right, that only a Buddha, only a Mahavir, you send them to Jesus. There's nothing you can do for them.
But I also have to not be in denial and realize.
Oh yes, you have to not be in denial.
Yeah, realize where I'm coming from.
That's right. If you are useless and your mate is useless, you all have a useless life together. You're not going to be of any value to it. Nothing. The children that will come through that useless relationship will be of no value to the world. All of your fruit will be rotten. You see. And that's a very powerful insight, because it forces you now to make some real decisions. Yes, Linda? You had a question.
I did, but I was reading through my notes and you pretty much answered it. In order to make a contribution, your contribution should be made to an individual that's actually seeking some type of contribution or self-awareness.
Yes.
Now,
if in that area, I mean, if you want to contribute
in any of those areas.
Yes.
Now, subconsciously, this person has to be aware of this, though. Am I correct? This person that's
the
seeking,
receiver.
consciously they may not be aware, but subconsciously don't they have to be aware?
Yeah, you
that
mean
they
like
are
seeing behind the ego mythology.
right?
One of the hardest things that we have to do is interesting in Sufism, which is the mystical component of Islam. There's some series of practices that one has to be able to master in order to make rapid spiritual progress. And it's interesting that two of them are related to this issue. One is that most of us don't know how to receive charity. Because when it comes time for us to be helped, our ego mythology is such, right, that it doesn't have anything in our inventory that says we are inadequate. So it's impossible now to allow others to be charitable to you. And when you don't know how to accept charity, you will not know how to give it. So please make a note of that. So those two things become very important. The first thing to learn is how to accept charity, how to accept another human being's help. Why does the mystics put a lot of emphasis on that? Because everything you will ever get in life will come from another human being. And now if you have not developed the capacity to receive from other human beings because of your ego mythology, then your life will be impoverished by definition. Because you will shut down the very ability to receive it. Out of your ego mythology, I don't need nothing, I can do for myself. This radical individualism combined with this ego mythology will leave that person impoverished on all levels. You see? Now sometimes we're open to charity on the mundane level, but we're not open to it on the emotional level. We're not open to it on, I mean, each of us have to look and see where our ego mythology blocks us out. So you're right, Linda, behind that ego mythology, all of us have need, with no questions. All of us need love. By definition, there are certain assumptions we're entitled to. We all need air. We all need food. These are absolute needs. They're just rooted in the very nature of existence. We don't have any options on it. And we can't hide no mythology, those needs behind mythology. You see? They will explode eventually. You see? So you're absolutely right. And to read, and that's one of the unique ability of those who have practiced living on the level of contribution. They have developed the uncanny ability to look behind that person's ego mythology and still make a contribution in spite of it. Sometimes you have to do it anonymously. Because are you looking for any recognition when you're on the level of contribution? No. If you're looking even for recognition, no, you're not on the level of contribution. You know, I did this here for you, and you know what I mean? Give me a few pats on the back. No. It doesn't work like that. So very often, at the level of contribution, a lot of the things you do will be anonymous. There'll be no way to trace it to you. In fact, the mystic said that those who have mastered life at the level of contribution have perfected this ability. They can make a contribution to you, and you will never know. They have mastered it. You see? They have mastered it. You see? So, we all have a pretty good understanding then of the mundane forms of this contribution, or emotional, psychological form, the mental, the sharing of knowledge, like Pam was saying, and like someone else was mentioning, you know, the sharing of knowledge sometimes, you see? Just a contribution. And spiritual, this is interesting. This one includes love. That's the greatest spiritual contribution you can make to the human. It's at the top, it's at the pinnacle, right? Because when you flood a person with your love, you wash away their sense of worthlessness. You wash it away. You give them a sense of worth. Hence, if I say I love you, and yet every minute that we spend together, you feeling more and more worthless, you can know for certain I don't love you. Not in the sense that I'm using this word. You can understand that I'm basically in relationship to you on a level of uselessness. And I might be confusing that because I myself don't know. Now, I'm not condemning the person living at the level of uselessness. I want you to be clear because we all is living at the level of, to some degree, of uselessness. So let's be clear. We're not talking about the other person. We're talking about ourselves in here. It's very important when we do these workshops that we understand we're talking about ourselves. We're not standing up on no pedestal, removing ourselves and saying, well, you know, so-and-so useless, or Bhagwan, you really are describing my husband or my wife to the T, but you're missing me. No, I'm not it. Your wife and husband are not here. I'm trying to talk about you. And I'm talking about me. We have to deal with rising out of our own personal extent of uselessness. You see? That is our test. That's why we're here. The other take care of themselves. So love then becomes one of the great spiritual contributions that we can make to another human being, because it wipes out their feelings of worthlessness. And some of the Eastern cultures, this is very beautifully reflected even in the traditions. I don't know how many of you are familiar with different cultures. I know, Pam, you have gone to India, and if you've gone into the Indian homes or Asian homes, you might have noticed a very strange practice. I know it seemed strange to me when I approached it was very different. And I used to watch how these Indian children, when they will get up in the day, and the first time they see their mother or their father, you know, we'll say, hi mom or hi dad. Well, some of you will. Some of you don't even speak to your mom and dad, right? They just give me my money and let me go. But one of the traditions that I saw that was so beautiful, when the children will first encounter their parents, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, because sometimes the parent is gone when the child arrives, they will always greet them, and the child will bow their head toward the parent, and in such a way, and they would just touch it. Right? You'll see gurus in the East very often. Their disciple will come and they'll just touch their head. This is called prashad, blessing. They will bless the child, meaning that you are sending to that child your prayers, sincere prayers, that their lives will be full of joy, abundance, and peace. You see, you're transmitting that emotional state. You're putting your blessings on the child. Or if the guru does that, he is blessing that disciple. He's pouring this goodwill into him. It is reflected even in the greetings of various religions in the world. Hotep in ancient Africa, peace, you see, was the same concept. We'll say, Hotep to you. What we're trying to pour on you is our desire that you experience peace. In Islam, they will say, Assalamu alaikum, you know, peace be upon you. Or in Judaism, shalom, peace. And so many other terminology. Again, the whole thing was to give. The idea was that every human being that you come across in the course of the day, you should be giving your blessings to, your prayers. It's a training to move yourself into a relationship with other human beings, even on a casual level, on the level of contribution. If you, in passing a person, cannot give them something on the mundane, emotional, mental level, certainly you can give them your blessings. Can't you? It's an interesting experiment. I've conducted it. You may like to try it. Sometimes incorporate into your daily practice how you see your wife or how you see your husband. One of the things that I used to do with my own wife, you know, to try to feel what is a much higher quality than this useless state that we started out. How to come out of that useless state. But I have to tell you, living in the useless state is not a lot of fun. It's no fun. The relationship is not fun. It's tension. It's stressful. It's fraught with this constant bickering, fighting, argument. That's not fun. And I didn't want to live with a person whom I had vowed to live with until the day I died. I take my vow seriously. But I said, God, you know, is it possible for me to rethink this? Because I can hardly take 2 days of this. When you talk about a lifetime. And so the Lord said, well, Bhagwan, the emphasis is on you to change. The emphasis is on you. Now you change. You do something about that, right? One of the techniques therapy that I use on myself, self-therapy, was I started looking at my wife with a different mindset. And at night when we used to go to bed, and I would put my arms around her, and I would just bless her. I would pour my blessings into her, pour my prayers into her. And the children, I would just look. Sometimes you don't have to be obvious, because that's not a part of our tradition. You know, I touch them on their head, they think I'm gonna hit them. They start. You understand, right? So Baba, you don't try this, okay? Because Amon Ra is used to a smack, okay? But just through your eyes, this is called dristi. The technique is called dristi in the East. Dristi. And just through my eyes, just through my look, I will fix, just briefly my attention on a person. And then through that channel, I will sin, I will sin consciously, sin it. At first it was real awkward because, I'm blessing somebody that is trying to tear me up, right? Yeah. I said, when I watched it, I felt that there was even a resistance to bless. I said, wow, this is interesting. You could almost measure the gap. Because this is your wife or this is your husband and you can't send them your blessings. And you cannot authentically pray that their lives be filled with joy, abundance, and peace. This is your wife. And you cannot utter up a sincere, heartfelt prayer and direct it at that person. It tells you where you stuck. And that's the first experience you get. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. But it's very instructive. And then slowly, just through the dristi, just a glance. Once you practice, it doesn't take long, just through your glance. You see? And you send that dristi, and you begin to change. You begin to notice a whole change in the relationship because you start behaving differently. You cannot abuse a person that you're praying for. Please make a note of that. You can't do it. You cannot fight with them. You cannot do anything, you see, that obviously connotes damage to that person. It's impossible. You would have developed a whole new habit of relating to that individual. And soon you become sweet. Soon it triggers your tenderness. And the other human being responds to that. Not to your discourses. This is nonsense. You're giving a sermon on how much you love your wife. This is nonsense. What is that? Or the wife is giving a sermon, how much I love you. Nonsense. What is that? You see? It has to be incorporated into your behavior. She can feel your tenderness just with a caress. You don't even need to touch, just your look. Just, not even your look, just your presence. Issues a wave of tenderness flows from it. That is when we become great masters of it. And we have to practice, you see. I'm not telling you you're going to run out over the weekend and change all this. No. What I'm telling you is that it is worth all the time and energy that you devote to this. Give your blessings. Give your prayers. And start first with the members of your own household. One of the greatest deception that most people who come to the path practice upon themselves is they immediately start trying to benefit the mankind in general with their spiritual growth. And they very often go right around the people in their household. They leap over them. And they start suffering from the illusion that you can have a loving attitude and respect for mankind in general. And yet your wife is eliminated from being a part of mankind. Your children, I suppose, are not a part of mankind. That this love and respect that you are working on developing is not for the benefit of your own children and your wife. And this is madness. It is self-deception in its greatest form. It starts in your home. If you can't love your wife and your children, then by definition you can't love humanity. They're part of humanity. So we have to start practicing this in the immediacy of our own homes, then let it spread like a ripple. You see my point? And at first it's very awkward. It's a very awkward feeling. It's very strange because you will feel phony. You will feel artificial. You're right. Because you are phony and you are artificial. So nothing wrong. So don't be alarmed. The first series of effort to do that, don't be alarmed. It will feel very mechanical, unnatural. Right, it will be very mechanical and unnatural. Because you have been mechanical and unnatural. It will feel very insincere, right? It will feel very insincere because you have been insincere. That's okay. But continue practicing, you see. And then you begin to reach a level where every human being that you start coming in contact with, very subtly, you don't even think no more. A wave of blessing urges rises from you, and it just hits. It just hits. And it's really strange. People respond to that. I tell you, people pick up on that vibe. And suddenly you find people are comfortable with you. You know, strangers feel like old friends you've been knowing for 30 years instantaneously because there's a kind of Buddha feel that issues from you. You see, that is full of these blessings, full of your drishti, full of your compassion. But I want to discuss this drishti first within the context of your own close personal relationships. You see? The male-female relationships. Now, we said a lot, but we will not exhaust this subject even if we stood here the rest of this year. This is a very profound subject that we're into. We all know the role that anger plays in these relationships. It becomes very clear now, because if you are not able to manage your anger in these relationships, then it's not possible to ever get off this useless side of the relationship. Are you following me on that? It's important that you understand this. To the degree that you're able to manage your anger effectively, and that even your impulse toward anger begins to decrease. To that same extent, you will remain on the useless side of the relationship. So again, we come back to these things: anger, your lust, your greed, your passion. You have to manage it. Failure to manage it will always keep us on the useless side of the relationship. And that's all. So we have to learn how to do that. That's why we come together over all these series of workshops, focusing. And as you learn how to manage these things, then slowly now you are coming out of that useless side. Right? Slowly, very slowly, you're starting able to shift and transform the relationship as far as you're concerned into one that is a reflection of your Buddha-sattvic nature. So begin to see. You can begin to give your blessings. How would you bless somebody out of your own? How would you bless somebody out of your blessing? It won't happen. It can't happen. So we have to work on all of these things. We're going to take our break now, and then when we come back, we will continue to explore this subject. And we'll start looking at some of the homework that I've asked you to do. Okay?
Half an hour.
We'll come back at 5 minutes to 2.